Okay, 6:01, call meeting to order. One, two, three. Four of us out of seven, so that's a quorum, so we're good to go. So we've got David Noller and Lonnie Taylor are out. And Tommy Belcher. Right. Rosalie's passed out the minutes from our April meeting. I want to take a moment to look through those.
It was interesting trying to wade through the whole discussion of taking things and consolidating or combining definitions and making sure we use the state definition of things. I also included the sales tax chart that we had, we were talking about.
As far as the
Food truck.
food trucks. I'll entertain a motion. Anyone see any corrections need to be made or? A second. No, I got a motion for.
I thought you said made the motion.
I got a motion from Jeff. Got a second?
Ron Ray.
Okay.
I just don't remember this part.
Sure.
On the PUD zoning, we could establish a lower fee than a major subdivision fee. What's that talking about?
Well, that was part of the discussion. If you take a major subdivision, what they have to file is $500 to bring a major subdivision forward. And for the rezoning, you don't have to rezone and do a major subdivision. That was the discussion, possibly lowering the filing for a PUD zone rather than the rezoning and major subdivision, that type of thing.
Has nothing to do with $5,000.
No, that's.
That's exactly, that's something else. Totally different.
These are just application fees. The idea was to try to persuade developers to go with the PUD versus open zoning on R3s.
They'd have to go with the PUD if we want to vote it them.
They, they may want to go ahead and take their chance,
It's like we discussed before, he said they had it in his other counties and they don't vote for R3 anymore because they go with the PUD because they got more control over it.
That would be an option of the commission. So waiting for that second.
Well, you got it first. Oh, you first.
Yeah,
I'll
first.
second. Okay.
Right, you need a second. All in favor of adopting these minutes?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? No? All right. So let's move on to status of our zoning ordinance. So Rick emailed me a couple of copies of the of what he's got. There's a few cleanup things we need to go over, and it looks like we're just about done with this progress. It'll be up to being cleaned up and then presented to the commission at this point. So up to this point, I want to thank everyone for all their due diligence and kind of going through this and the discussions. When I'm looking at granted, it's a rough copy that I've got, but it is so much cleaner, so much easier to find things. It's completely, it's just really nice. If you've got a question about something, you go down the table of contents, there it is. You can go to that section and then that's your section you've got. You don't have to worry about which document you're looking at or, are you looking at the revised version or the original version? It's just nice and clean and it's a good starting point. And I think it'll be easy to maintain this way as we go forward with new ordinances and whatnot that come forth. So on that said, Rick, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. I've got a few questions and I made a few changes going through when I was reconciling the latest version with the working copy we've had in the past. As an example, 5.090, we had talked about a mobile home park development standard. And for whatever reason, however it got there, it specified in the general services district. Well, the effect of that language is that if you leave it that way, then the urban services district has no development standard. So my suggestion is to strike that language and leave one development standard countywide so that there's nobody left out. If there's a mobile home park to be developed, there's one standard throughout the county.
Does everyone understand that?
But it doesn't say that. But first there has to be received approval to put a mobile home park there.
That's what this is doing. This is the standard for developing that park.
But these are the guidelines you'd have to meet.
In either one.
Yeah, so right now, the way it's done, there are standards for the rural area, but no standards for inside the old city limits. But by taking the wording out, it makes everyone happy. Trousdale County has the same standards. Because we have to allow, you have to allow it. You can't zone it out of existence. So if you're gonna have it legally, you wanna have some sort of standards to be able to.
Does that fall under, red R3?
Yeah,
It's the standard wherever it's applied.
yeah,
In this case, it's R3.
but it would be in, yeah.
So anyone we approve for R3, they end up not doing
An apartment
apartment,
complex,
they could do a trailer.
if they have enough property and they meet the standards for.
And this gives the planning commission ordinances and standards to evaluate that what comes before them, because if they don't have anything to use to evaluate it, they have no ordinance to.
We can't tell them they can't do something if the commission doesn't give us guidelines to tell them. Does that make sense?
But still, once it's changed to R3, if it meets every other requirement, it can be a trailer.
Yep.
Mhm. But under a PUD, it couldn't.
Not if they did it as, yeah, they would have to do it as a trailer park from the get-go.
And like I said a minute ago, when I was reading through this thing, I came across a few things that jumped out at me. The definition of a condominium mentioned a common vertical wall. The language in the state law doesn't specify. And I know of at least one apartment building that's been condo, and it has horizontal wall separation, floor and ceiling separation. So I took out the word vertical. So if there's a common wall, wherever that happens, vertical or otherwise.
So that just brings us to state standards in that situation.
Group home. I didn't need anything on this one. I just wanted to bring out the point that we have a distinction in the ordinances between major and minor. The state law says that if you have a provision as minor defines, for the most part, if you have a provision for a single family residence, that a group home for handicap shall be considered single family. So, regardless of how we define it, that part of the state code is going to take precedence. So if somebody brings in a group home that meets the definition that the state has established for mentally and physically handicapped, you got to allow it. Can't discriminate on based on zoning. I mean, we have a distinction here between major and minor and try to talk about reaching their potential and all that. And that sounds good, but you break it all down to the nuts and bolts, and state law is going to control. And the definition is about 3 lines long.
Now, I thought back in April, we made some adjustments to the wording
We did. It's in our minutes.
to make it,
It's here,
yeah, okay.
it's here, but
I thought the minute said 8, but I just read that.
but still in all, whatever definition we have here is subservient to state law.
So, okay.
We're Dillon Rural State, so whatever the state
So it would be
provides,
that.
we abide by.
Well, no, the 8 is a number of people that you can have in the group home, and that's the state definition. That's what was in that.
And that does not include, felon group.
Right,
homes?
right,
It does not.
does not. There was, the yellow highlight is some leftover cleanup from changing sections around, adding the use categories, bumped everything down and changed around all of the references. So I went back through and made sure all those references are correct as best I could. Thumb through, there are a few of those. There's another article reference. If it's in green, it was something to talk about tonight. Yellow is sort of notes to me. Those, we took out most of the references back to old actions by resolution or ordinance. In those two cases, it probably has some value to leave that in there just as a historic reference to when it came about and why, like bed and breakfast is a part of the intermediate impact facility, and telecommunication facility was added by ordinance in 2014. If someone has a question about it, it might be handy to have that embedded in the document and not have to go searching for it.
Well, by having it there, then you can easily reference it to either
Exactly.
video or the minutes to another discussion and
Yeah,
the kind of the thoughts behind why it was done in the first place.
exactly.
I appreciate that.
Bottling and packaging spring water, that's a leftover from another county that I missed early on. I just took that out. It doesn't have home here.
I was gonna say, I don't remember seeing that in an allowed use and.
Yeah, no.
Scared them.
No. And transit habitation includes provision of lodging services for transient guests. The term shall include two different types of activities as defined in 2.010. It's not defined, so I struck that out. It's a
Can't reference a non-definition.
blank reference, that's right.
Do we have that in our ordinance, transfer the?
It's by
Transit?
use, it's not defined.
I was gonna say, I don't remember
I
seeing
mean,
that.
it just goes by the common definition.
Okay.
And this one I wanted to discuss, agricultural resource production, extractive activities. There are a number of things there that are ordinary for agricultural uses. And there was a breakout in one of the documents about veterinarian services for large animals. And instead of putting it with, like kennels and regular veterinarian services, I dropped it into ag services as a use permitted. It can also be in with the other veterinarian services if it's chosen to be that way. And this just gives another option for it to be in a different zone. It broadens it out where it can be located for large animals. There was a distinction, and I had a hard time trying to decide what to do with it, so I dropped it into
So
ag services.
that being where it is there, that would be in an A1 zoning, correct?
And it could be, I guess, in agriculture in town,
Mhm.
but mostly it's going to be in the county and ag, yes.
Okay. But with the kennels and whatnot, they can be in commercial, correct?
Right.
So if we left this in commercial, then that would, you'd still be able to do veterinarian for large animals in commercial then, correct?
And I think you can, the way it's written, it doesn't distinguish it doesn't discriminate against large animals. It just veterinarian services. This is specifically for large animals, so you don't have small animal veterinarian clinics out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
But I think our veterinarian does large animals, and I don't know, there's barns back there. I don't know if he brings them in. He can still do that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a reference to county streets that might be a problem if it's in town, so I changed that to public. Mobile home parks. The language that I brought in said proposals for mobile home parks shall follow separate provisions outlined in Article 5.090. And I changed that to say shall also follow provisions outlined. One is a set of site plan provisions for general, and the other is for mobile home parks. And I didn't think that if there was something in a site plan proposal that was required to be there for a convenience store, that should be left out if it's a mobile home park. So mobile home park has the same site plan requirements as any other development, plus whatever is found in 5.090. So they're bound by that as well.
So in that case, you're not making it more restrictive or less restrictive, you're just combining the two in
That's
one
right.
language.
That's right.
I know I'm kind of reiterating, but it's more for the video, for
No,
anyone
that's fine.
watching and for
That-
clarification purposes.
That's fine. Not a problem. Buffer strips, we had two, and I didn't know a better way to treat it than to just break it out the way it was presented in the two different ordinances. In general services, it says shall provide a buffer strip. In urban services, it's in more detail.
Mhm.
So I dropped both in, and they're distinct for general and urban services.
Well, the urban services was actually done recently within the last couple of years.
Yeah.
We just did that one. So that's probably why it's a little more in depth than the
Right.
other.
Right. And I, instead of trying to figure out a way to put it into one standard, I just dropped them both in there and let them control where it is. Again, mobile home parks and general services district just carries through. That's a reference to Article 4. The same mobile home parks and general services districts, and these are all the standards. One thing I did change in the mobile home park standard, a comprehensive drainage plan with contour lines at 5-foot intervals. If the site is very flat at all, you're not going to see what is going on the site. So I changed that to 2-foot intervals, which is pretty common practice.
Oh, you got more topographical, you can tell with the slope and whatnot.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So, but if we require other site plans to do 5-foot intervals, which is also listed elsewhere in the ordinances, do we need to change that to 2-foot intervals?
If it's not taught later on, and yes.
Okay.
And this one, dimensional requirements for parks, it's the current language says each mobile home shall have a front yard of 50 feet. And the next item, number 2, says each mobile home park shall provide a rear and side. I think the word park got left out, so I dropped it in. I don't think each individual space was meant to have a 50-foot front yard. Article 9. Just a reference update there. Article 5, Article 8. Sorry to be going so fast. I'm trying to
No,
not hog the mic.
that's, yeah.
That's a site plan reference. Changed it from 5 to 2. That's for many warehouses. Again, if the site is very flat, you don't see anything with 5-foot interval.
And with water drainage becoming a pretty hot topic after this spring with all the development we've
Oh,
had,
man.
it's important that we have that.
Fire protection provided to meet existing city codes. I just struck the word city. There's no reason for it to be there. It limits it to just the old city limits. And this one I wasn't certain about. I don't think we've ever had a planning and zoning department, so I changed that to county building inspector and building department. Does that sound correct?
Are you the building department also?
Well, I have an office manager. So
What
what
matter,
matter, but two.
So that both of those are your office.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's something we cleaned up earlier. It was the city had you listed as one thing and the county had you listed as another.
Mhm.
So that just gives uniformity across it.
And that, again, planning and zoning department changed to building inspection department.
You need to get a truck. Yes.
And this one was tough.
All right.
This one was tough. I had have a matrix worked up that shows the different lot requirements, lot size requirements in the different zones. But the way it was written up in the county, and this is, I mean, the way it's written up in the city. No, it's county. I'm sorry. TR1 is county, the old county. The way it's written up, all these qualifiers, I didn't have a way to fit that into the matrix and it make any sense at all to carry that much language through as a footnote or something like that is just, you know, it's running in circles. So I added that back in and it references this section in the matrix. So when you look for lot size in TR1, it's going to refer you back to this part of the ordinance. I couldn't come up with a more elegant way to do it, and I apologize for that. Same thing here. TR2 is same thing, only a little bit more of it. There's a different breakout for the different numbers of units. Commercial and industrial are a bit the same. And then the old city HR1 don't have that. So it just goes district description, accessory uses, uses prohibited, parking, and landscaping. There's no reference to lot size or setback or any of that. It's in the matrix. And I had to break it out in the county to be all inclusive. Changed town of Hartsville to urban services district. And at the bottom, I just struck the word Hartsville from the zoning map and just left it as referencing the zoning map. This is the PUD provision. So if you have any questions or have any questions, we can talk about it as I go through, but it's pretty much boilerplate language. One is for residential, one is for mixed use, and there's general.
Looking at it right now. Did anyone have anything they found in going through it? Any changes they'd like to make, anything they want to discuss?
I had some things highlighted and I can't remember the exact thing that I. So, like in item 4. In the. Actual FUD. It said, within 1 year after the date of approval, actual construction shall have commenced in such development. So. Normally when they do like, a subdivision, they have up to so many years to actually start the construction before, they can wait for a period of time before they actually start the construction. But with the PUD, they have to start it within a year.
And it says may. It doesn't do away with it. It says may. It's an actual zoning. So the zoning holds. It's just saying that.
Okay, because I had here, it says shall have commenced.
What's that?
Right.
So we can all be on the same page.
So it's in the Article 7, Planned Unit Development Regulations, General Provisions, the 7.020. And it has master plan, ownership, relation to subdivision regulations, and then development period, in the staging period. So.
Shall have commenced, but if you read the next sentence, in the event that construction has not started, the planning commission may conduct a hearing and may proceed to cancel or extend, depending on the circumstances.
So now, if that happens, and I'm just thinking, okay, what does this process look like? Because if somebody has to go before the planning commission,
Doesn't change.
do they need to pay another fee? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So if they haven't, so you pay to play.
Yeah.
If you want to develop, if you don't start it within a year.
Yeah.
Then you need to go back to planning in a year.
Yeah, I mean,
And so
it
it's fine.
says may,
Okay.
in the event construction has not been started, planning commission may conduct a hearing. If they do, it's advertised, it's another hearing on the PUD, so it's,
And the planning commission has to be paid to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the planning commission would be the one who would start that procedure.
right. This goes to the planning commission for the request for the PUD. And then that preliminary document and the rezoning request, it is the PUD, goes to the county commission. And they adopt or deny.
But
If
the
it's
year
adopted-
goes by and they hadn't
If
started,
it's adopted, then it comes back to the planning commission for everything following, until there's a request to change it.
but it hadn't started. So is it up to the person was given permission? Oh, it's been a year, I hadn't started. I gotta go back. Or is it up to her office to say, oh, I'm gonna go check on this?
If it goes past a year and nothing has been done, and they come in to see Rosalie and say, I'm ready to start, then it's up to y'all to decide whether you want to have another hearing or whether you want to let it proceed. If conditions have changed.
Yeah.
Something has happened in the meantime that they didn't get started their 1 year grace period. You know, that's reason to have another hearing on it and say, okay, you know, we've got a new road coming through that wasn't accounted for, or, you know, any number of things that might happen in the
So
meantime.
just out of curiosity, the people who, they didn't get a PUD, they wanted one, but they've got a C3. That now they got the approval, now they're going after their financing. I don't know, Highway 25.
Okay.
And financing can take a bit, I would assume. Assuming they were a PUD. They have to get their financing and get started.
Well, you got to assume that they're not waiting until they turn their documents in to get started on their financing package.
So we gotta go get our financing now.
And that may be true, but that doesn't mean that's the way it should be done.
So, and here's the reason why it would be a good idea to have that they have to come back. So we found out at planning that the water department has met the capacity of the water treatment plant, according to the state of Tennessee. So what we have gotten approved is the last new construction we can have approved until the water department makes some changes. They're limited on how many water taps they can do. We've got a couple of apartment complexes and some other projects that were approved and never started. So if they didn't have water taps, now we don't have the infrastructure for those projects. But now some of those will have to come back anyway because they've been out, past the time. But this would force, they would have to come back. We would have the opportunity then to look at the infrastructure of the area to see if it would support it or not at that time. When they originally came through, we might have had the infrastructure, but someone else built a subdivision or built an apartment complex and took what they were going to have. And so now you don't have the infrastructure anymore.
So by you saying that, there already is somewhat of a time limit?
Yeah,
Okay.
On-
the
on
big
certain-
rates.
on certain, well, we don't really have.
The way
C3.
you word, the way you word
You're
it.
talking about R3s, I think is what you mean. Okay. So, yes, I mean, there are several that we have done rezonings on.
Okay.
And they've put forth a plan. There's the one I know especially is, Jason Ford came and did a site plan for an apartment complex to go parallel to the, right beside the Hickory Ridge subdivision. And that was several years ago. And what the limit on that is 5 years?
For a site plan
Yeah,
approval, it may be 5 years. I'll have to check on that. That was before me.
and he had approval, but now with everything else, he doesn't have water source now for that apartment complex.
So there's
So this-
always been time limits, but for a PUD, it's all tightened up.
It will, yeah.
And this can change. I mean, there's nothing in here that's permanent. If a year proves to be too short for some reason, it can be adjusted.
And the planning commission can do that
Or can just give that
Does-
one
because it says
permission and,
exactly.
yeah.
So, yeah, I see the need for it.
Yeah.
Until,
I just had to ask.
until
those
we get more
questions.
infrastructure, we're gonna start, growth is going to be forced to slow. I knew that the water department had looked at building a new water treatment plant. I had no idea we were up against capacity the way we are.
Wow.
So that's gonna slow things a lot more than that impact fee is going to.
Did
Correct.
someone told me this may be a truthful statement? I didn't say much that. Did Core Civic pay to have a water treatment expanded?
I have no information on it.
Okay,
I can't speak to you.
okay.
Did that answer your question, Rosalie?
Yes, thank you very much.
Does anyone have anything else? As I went through it, it looked very straightforward and I mean, it gives property owners the ability to say, here's what I want to do and get their rezoning based on what they want to do. It protects the county from some of these developers who came in a couple of years back and said, well, here's what I want to do. And then they got the rezoning and then sold it to someone else. They decided, well, we want to do even more density development. And we kind of got hung out because, well, we approved it. And now you end up, instead of doing 36, you end up with 100 lots, units on a property. It makes it really hard to plan for infrastructure and whatnot when you end up in situations like that, especially for traffic and, water for that matter. You got anything else, Rick?
I referenced Tazewell County Health Department in here by just cut and paste, and I didn't know if that should reference Department of Environment Conservation or sanitary sewer alternative. I don't know who approves your septic systems and alternate systems and all that. TDEC. Okay. I will. I'll fix that right away.
So, on the PUDs again, it says here, all PUDs shall comply with the following area regulations, minimum size 5 acres. I know we had a discussion about that
Right.
the last meeting we had, so that's what we want to say. Any PUD has to have 5 acres, that's the minimum size
We
that you
discussed that.
have.
No, you said we should take that out. And I agreed because my sister's PUD was 2 acres. That was beautiful. Beautiful
But we
development.
didn't, there was
We
no
didn't
motion.
finish that. We didn't finish
There's
it.
no motion on this.
This was the,
Yeah,
this is what we're reviewing and
Right.
massaging and kind of evaluating it. And that's just one of the things I'm bringing forward, is
It's
it?
5 for residential and 2 for commercial, I believe.
Okay.
You
And
did-
I know that Ashland City took it out of theirs. I didn't know if you wanted to take it out of yours.
I would say take it out just because I'm aware of one. Or actually, I'm really aware of more than, I'm aware of multiples in the city of Memphis that are high-end, expensive, not 5 acres, beautiful.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
Well, the idea is that you've got a closed zoning on more property as you drop that acreage down. It just gives the county even more protection on from open zoning.
I didn't follow that.
So if you drop it to 2 acres, well, now you've got more lots that'll qualify for a PUD than if you just kept it at 5.
I'm sorry.
And is that a bad thing if you have more lots available for PUDs? That means there are a lot.
I don't think it is a bad idea. Yeah,
That's what I'm
But it's a
saying.
larger complex. She only had 8 or 9 people to deal with because you govern yourself. Only 8 or 9 families dealt with your rules. If it's 3 times that size, you got 27 different families making and enforcing rules.
and I think
And they're much harder to.
I think what you're kind of mixing up PUD and HOA in what I understand that your sister, they did a PUD, but they've got an HOA which has their neighborhood rules. The PUD doesn't have the neighborhood rules.
It does.
Well, it has some, but not as much as an HOA.
Actually, it kind of talks about that in this.
I missed that part.
But what we're saying is that don't have such large acreage.
Drop the acres down in.
down to two.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's what we're saying.
That's the discussion.
So go from 5 down to 2.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Well, do I have a motion on that?
I'll make that.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Sorry, I wasn't following.
No worries.
So you gotta have a minimum of 2 acres to get, or a maximum of 2.
No, it'd be a minimum. We're lowering the minimum from 5 to 2 is what the motion does. So it doesn't make, you don't have to get a
Right.
PUD at 2. It just
Right.
allows you to qualify for a PUD at 2 acres instead of 5.
Instead of 5.
So what's the vote?
Now,
I
is there?
only heard one person vote, so I'm waiting on the other side.
One more question.
And that's fine.
Just one more question. If it is stuck down to 2, or no matter if it's 10, does anything say, indicate how many homes can be in that 2 acres? Is there a size? It was 1,200 feet, wasn't it?
It's controlled by the,
Other stuff.
Yes.
Okay, yeah,
PUD itself. It has a maximum density installed.
okay. A maximum or a minimum?
Maximum. So you can only have so many houses and so many square feet of front.
So I vote yes.
Okay, so I got 2. Jeff, you yay or nay?
I don't know, I still don't know. So if it didn't go to PUD, it'd have to go to R3.
It would just go to an open zoning of R3, yeah.
If we allowed it to.
Right.
Boy, Sam Brown.
I would say the 2 acres is big.
Okay. All right, that's unanimous vote, yeah.
Okay.
So there's a little homework, right?
No, that's okay. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
Department of Environment Conservation, I highlighted that one. I wasn't sure, but I expected that's what it would be. Same thing there. Let me take that out. We don't have a health department that approves septic systems, I don't believe.
No, sir, you don't.
Not much left. All this has been pretty well run through the mill. References to different articles.
So I got one quick question.
That's it.
That is the.
This is Coles End zone.
Yes, yeah.
Where I live, I had someone from Gallup, actually Hendersonville, come do some landscaping. I showed him where my gas line ran, because I was going to freeze down the side. He said, "Oh, don't worry about that." He said, by codes, it has to be 2 feet underground. Less than 1 shovel's length, they busted my gas. Is that a code that is in anything that we've got?
And that'll be a conversation for you and Rosalie after the meeting.
Okay.
But that's not, what we're
Okay.
dealing with. All right, so next thing we have is PUD zoning, which I believe we just covered all that. So burn permit, so this, unless y'all have something more to comment with it, this would be the last discussion. Next time it comes before this body, it'll be the finished ordinance ready to go ahead. So I talked with Mr. Beeler, and the issue we had was time limits. And he wants it to be the same as the forestry's burn permit, which is you burn the day you get your permit. So if you want to burn today, you call Rita's office, you get your permit today, you burn today. There is no giving him so much time to approve it. There's no getting it for today so that you can burn on the weekend. So there'll be no burning on Sundays. The way he said he wanted it put in, because Rita's office isn't open on Sundays.
There was discussion about
There was.
giving it to the sheriff's department with a 7.
Well. Yeah. So he was fine with what we've come up with. But that was the time You know, those were the two questions we had, how much time he needed to approve it and for how long it was good for. So
So it's not burning on Sundays.
no, according to this, in the urban district, so in the old city limits, if this were to pass,
Right.
there'd be no burning. Excuse me. Now, you can still do your barbecues, you can still do your fire
Right.
pits, all the stuff that are,
You talking about big burn?
but yeah, open burns, you couldn't do them in the city limits on Sundays. Has nothing to do with anything religious. It's just Reed's office who would be issuing the permit is not open on Sundays, so you couldn't get a permit.
So how does Rita know when to issue and not to issue?
That was a question I had for him, and I don't believe I got a satisfactory answer to be able to pass it along to you. Because Rita's just going to issue the permit
Right.
if she's, you know,
But she told me.
unless she's told not to. Now, you can't, we can't depend on her to look at the weather forecast every day to see if it's too windy and whether they should be approved or not. So what he wanted to do was all the restrictions would be posted on the county website. And if they got a permit and if they violated those restrictions and were burning and the fire department was called out, they'd be cited.
I don't think
For-
that's fair.
I don't either, but that is what he's proposed. So I'm bringing that before you guys so that we can discuss it. And
Yeah, if whoever gives that permission has to have the authority to say it is okay to do it that way. There's people who probably don't know how to go and see what the wind's gonna be,
A bit dry.
have that knowledge of.
Yeah.
So however we do this, if we're gonna put it in writing. Which I don't think, my opinion, that's not. And I'm not one of the recommendations, like I said. I realize.
Alan, Jeff, any thoughts?
Well, the wind speed, that thing like we talked about, they said not to burn when the wind's 10 or 15 mile an hour. You don't get many days that you ain't got a 10 or 15 mile an hour wind.
Mhm.
I mean, I didn't. But when it gets up there to 20 and 25, yeah, they don't need to be.
Yeah.
Burning nothing, but I didn't know about a 10, which he's the man, so he should know, so.
But I think the common question is, what normal people's gonna know? I wouldn't know. I'm abnormal. What normal people's gonna know if
Well-
it's 15 or 20 miles an hour?
Maybe, what are you talking about cited? What are you talking about? Fined or?
Yeah.
What if they got a warning first?
Well, that'd be up to the
My
chief.
house is already burned down.
Like,
In that situation, we decided it would
Yeah.
go to.
So in that situation, if there's actually damage caused because an individual was open burning,
right,
well, then that just gets cited and they go in front of the judge and the judge sets that.
right,
Because we have no way of determining what the future damage would be, you know, to the value of a house. I mean, that's beyond the scope of what we can do. And that's the whole point of having a deputy cite them or the chief, the fire chief cite them for, you know,
Right.
improper burn.
right. What is the fee?
We never set a fine. We left that for a judge to set that.
If they're cited, but
If they're
were you asking what's the fee to get approval?
No, the fee if you got
If
cited.
you got
Yeah, if you get
cited?
cited.
Do you know anything about this in other counties?
No, ma'am, very little, very little. I know the city issues, burn permits, but beyond that, I don't know about the criteria or how they issue them or.
So they do
What they
issue
base it
it,
on.
which makes sense then.
Mhm.
But the part I didn't like, I don't care if anybody can burn on Sunday. But then it's up to me, the individual, to know if I meet those guidelines.
Yes.
When you've given me permission to do it.
Well, there's a lot of, we give you permission to drive a car too, but you're supposed to know the rules of the road. So,
I guess.
I mean, there are several things in state and local government that, yeah, if you're gonna participate in something, you're supposed to know the legal obligations of what you're doing. So I said, his point was, he didn't want to be any more complicated than the forestry systems. That's, you know, their system is already set up.
And that's how they do it.
That's the way they do it. When he, in his conversation with me, he said, you know, this was originally done, that him and, that you and him kind of just pulled from the state and said, you know, here you go, here's a foundation. Now, we changed some of the wording to make it a little more palatable and just a little easier to understand, but that's the gist of it. He didn't want to make it any more complicated than what the county already has to do for theirs. He's just trying to be able to eliminate the commercial burning, open burning. And I have sent Rosalie several pictures. Every contractor has built behind me has had a pile of trash burning for every house down through there. There's nothing to stop them from doing it. So there's, if something were to have gotten out of hand, if the wind were to kicked up, some of those fires are set and the guys are inside the house working and no one's watching the fire. It's just going.
So, yeah.
So I understand what the chief was wanting to do. This is what he's brought before us. I think my personal opinion, you know, stepping away from the chair for a second, my personal opinion, it does make it the same as for the county, or county residents have to do. If it's not been a burden on the county residents calling the forestry department and getting burn permits, then this shouldn't be any more of a burden on them. And it would push contractors to start using dumpsters instead of just burning on the properties that they're building on.
You're saying the county, people that live in the county,
Yes,
that's called forestry department.
yes,
And this is for people who live in the city.
yes, ma'am. Because the city doesn't have any burn permit of any kind. The rural area is over with the forestry's domain.
Had one, no one can find it.
Yeah.
Is Clark open on Saturday?
Do I
Is
need
she open on Saturday?
till 12?
Okay, yeah.
8 to 12.
So, yeah, and for the record, yes, there was at one time a burn permit in the urban district, in the old Hartsville city limits. There is a placeholder and it says that there was a burn permit and it said we found when it was enacted. But no one can find the actual written material of what was included in the actual permitting, what the regulations were for the permit. That information had been lost. That's why he brought this up. So that this would just put it in place. Here's
For the city.
Fire chief.
the fire chief. So that was the whole reason of bringing this forward in the first place. Someone actually asked for the, you know, burn permit regulations in writing. And he had nothing to give them. Apparently there was a flood or a fire one, and we lost a lot of city documents back years ago. And they believe that that's what happened to it. There wasn't a digital copy made at the time. So what's the will of the body?
So we brought this in, it's their responsibility on the wind speed and the whatnot, drought conditions.
Yep.
I mean, if I'm gonna burn, I'm gonna be looking for that. you
Yeah.
know. But
That's,
the wind speeds on thing gets.
yeah, this still goes to commission. We are just putting it together to send to the commission. And since this is what the chief has asked of us, I didn't see how it was an overbearing, responsibility. So I had no problem bringing it before us and voting on it. If that's what we wanted to do, then that's what we'll send forward. And if it's not what we'll do, we'll leave it the way it sits. Because, I mean, right now, yeah, the way it sits now is there is no time. And if Rita's not in her office, then you can't get a burn permit. And I would like it to be, I'd like something to be said, so it's not left, just up in the air.
They tell people what they do with the paint.
Yeah,
And
but unfortunately, we're getting so close together in the urban. And you got some people who don't seem to understand that.
Right, and look, how big a fire is one to have a burn
That's,
permit?
that's left up to the chief when he shows up because your fire got out of control.
See, there's so much unknown. I think I'm
Right,
doing the
you're
right
out,
thing,
like
but I'm.
your barbecue
Yeah.
or your fire pit, you're like, what, we can find the sizes and stuff there. didn't we?
We did. And so really what it comes down to is,
That's what you was asking.
Well, like I said, the fire half as big as this table, or a fire big as this table, you know.
Well, if it's open and there's nothing
It's
confining
open
it,
regardless.
it's regardless.
Yes.
It can be as big as you want, as long as.
If you're burning refuge in a burn barrel, which is already against, state law for EPA issues and whatnot, clean air stuff. But if you just throw a bunch of stuff out in your yard, you set it on fire, and you don't have anything confining it, rocks or bricks or whatnot, it's an open burn.
That's what I'm saying, if
Yeah.
you put up 2 or 3 block high,
Well, then it ain't an open
big as
burn.
a swimming pool.
Okay.
So that-
That's confined. It's not an open
that's what I
burn.
was-
Okay.
Yeah. According to the discussions we had with both Ken Buckmaster and with Chief Beeler.
And if that confined fire burned your house with the neighbor's home,
Well, it's
it
confined.
wasn't, it's not your fault, you don't have to pay a fine.
No, you still have to, you're still responsible for your actions. Yeah.
True.
But it gets you out of any trouble with the permitting process. So
Now,
that's what we have before us.
are we going to allow contractors to get a burn permit? Does it have to
Allowed
be,
force.
or does it need to be, well,
Well,
some
they-
contractors are property owners because they buy the lot.
But they, in this wording here, it says they can't burn the trash out of the house.
Well, they can. If they got it.
No, no, it still says, let's go back and look at it.
I don't really mind the wood waste, but I don't care for the trash.
But you've got some wood that.
Yeah, so-
Structure and all that kind of stuff.
For the prohibited open burn, it lists everything.
And I'm dealing with a property maintenance concern where, they demoed a property and they cut down trees and now they're burning like all the trees and they left the fire unattended for days.
Well, didn't the state highway people do that, turn down the trees for the new highway 141? They burned for days.
They weren't in the city limits.
Yeah, this is
Right.
in the city limits.
Where does the city limits stop going out that way?
Stops at Goose Creek. So first, the second line in the ordinance itself, the definition, open burning refers to the burning of any material in an open area where the combustion byproducts are released directly into the air and outside of an enclosed space.
Which I don't think was wrong.
Rocks around it won't be enough. Cause you'd have to have some screen or some, over top of it to be not considered an open burn. Now, that does not apply to fire pits, barbecues, recreational or religious. So really, this is going after people burning trash for commercial use to dispose of their trash instead of hauling it to a dump. The way I see it, that's what it leads me to believe is the intent of the ordinance.
Who wrote, where'd you get this?
This is what Chief Beeler brought to us and what we then amended. So, do we accept his definitions on the times, or do we come up with our own? That's what's before us.
So wood scraps and trade waste is prohibited,
Yes, ma'am.
but yet trees, limbs, and brush is okay.
Mhm.
So that would be your wood that's got the protection on it that
You're
you're
treating,
saying
yes,
is-
If you wanna cut some limbs down and you wanna throw them in your fire pit and burn them, you're good. But if you're building a house and you wanna save money by burning it in the front yard, you can't. Yeah.
But see, reading this, I like it.
Mhm.
The only thing I didn't necessarily care for was I'm calling a government official
Mhm.
to give me a permit for
Mhm.
that day, so I've got permission. Yet I am a not intelligent person, very unintelligent person.
Mhm.
I'm supposed to know to go to the internet, which do I even have one? And look up this stuff.
Once again, it's the same as your driver's license.
They took a test.
Well,
I don't know of anybody walking around that don't have a phone in their pocket.
Yeah.
And you look it up on the internet.
we have
That's
Android,
That's true. That's true.
so
Are we saying that they're calling in to get this permit, or do they have to come in and actually file?
they have to come in and get it.
Okay, so they can't just call in and get.
'Cause there's
the
mo-
permit.
Well, and we haven't decided yet if we're gonna do a $20 charge or not. I'm talking with the chief, he said he'd rather not. He doesn't care one way or another.
I'd say you get more people to do it, if you don't charge that.
Yeah. But you can
Yeah.
easily have,
It ain't gonna nobody do it until a few of them get cited.
and honestly,
It's true.
Judy, to address your comments, you could easily, if we're gonna make them come into the building to get their permit, then here's a copy of your restrictions. You know,
We
Do
can
they
do
have to
that.
sign it? Do they have to sign it?
Yeah, that way they can say they got it. That'd be an easy. And I'll add that to it before I bring it in as a final copy.
Well, now, at our last meeting, we asked Mr. David to compile the necessary information.
Mhm.
We handed out, so.
I have not received
Guidelines.
anything yet, but yes, that was one of the things we.
I think it needs to be on that list saying you're liable for finding out if it's drought,
Mhm.
too much wind speed, or whatever.
And put the guidelines on there and the website to go to. I think it was Burn Safety and.
I thought 10 to 15 mile an hour was a little too tight.
But you can, you can probably just say, hey Siri, what's the wind
Yeah.
speed today? And it'll probably tell you. That's how I get my record.
All right, so what do we want to do on this whole time discussion?
What he wants, and he's gonna be the one having to deal with it anyway, if we go.
No, it's not.
If he goes go a different route, he's.
Yeah.
Not gonna like it.
But he's not the one dealing with it, Rick's office.
She's just
Right.
issuing them. He's the one who's gonna have to enforce and
He is
respond.
not her.
No,
It's his recommendation.
so do I have a motion?
Does it say he will, and he's the enforcing?
He's the fire chief. It's a burn permit. Yes.
But we don't have that piece of paper that who fills out the paper that we're gonna give them that has what you can and can't do.
Right.
That'll come from Rita's when she issues the permit.
Is that like one of these pages on here?
It's not yet.
Okay,
I'll have to get that from the chief when we go to submit it, get it all together.
I mean, I'd like to see that.
Okay. Well, right now I just need to know about the time part so I can get that.
Yeah.
Well, why don't
I
we
think
wait till we
time-
get
I
that?
think the
And-
time part's good.
Okay, so is that a motion?
I'm open.
All right, so I got motion.
Motion for what now?
So
Time.
you gotta get your permit the day you learn.
Okay, all in favor?
Uh,
Any opposed?
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, so it's unanimous. All right, so the next time I bring this before us, you will have a full thing. We'll have the list of restrictions that go along with it. So, and a copy of what the permit will look like.
Right.
So if
That way it all
he
goes to the-
enforcement it, a law enforcement officer driving down the road saying that,
They have every right to enforce it. It's a law.
Check it, please check it.
Yep. So, all right,
One quick one, David.
yes, sir.
I went back and found the reference in the plot plan requirements. We said change 5 to 2 feet intervals in, many warehouses
Mhm.
and mobile home parks, but we didn't change. I didn't recognize that there was a 5-foot requirement for plot plans in general. That's what this is. So is it consensus to change that to 2-foot intervals also?
That's
That's
Yeah,
what you
I
said.
mean, for the purpose of what we're.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you probably need to change it to also the subdivision regulations, because that also.
well, that'll be a
details out
separate, that'll be
Yeah.
the planning, you have to do that. But yes, I think that's great.
Yeah.
one more thing about the wind thing, you know, a lot of times I look up the wind and it just tells you what the
what it could be.
standard wind is.
Yeah.
It don't tell you what you have to look up a little harder to find what the
Yeah.
gust
Yeah.
is. That's
And what it is at the time you light the fire to during the fire.
right.
Yeah.
That's the gust is different.
Okay, so let's have this discussion then. A person thinks they're doing the right thing. What he says
Mhm.
occurs.
Yeah.
By us putting it in here or not putting it in here, where does that leave the county?
That's an attorney question. I don't have the information for that.
It probably won't be anything different unless something happens.
And if something happens,
then
then
it'll
you're
be
still
something
responsible.
It's so out of bounds
Mhm.
that you should have by common sense, no.
That'd be a judge's decision.
If I'm shooting my gun out in the backyard and I'm shooting in a safe direction, but it ricochets off a rock and kills somebody, I'm still liable for that bullet. If you light a fire, even though you had, everything was good to go, and the wind came and busted, and it's an act of God, it's still an act of God, it's still some damages was done and you're responsible for the damages. This doesn't absolve you from anything.
No, opposed to too.
Exactly. All right. Anything else? You got anything, Rosalie?
Not anything really prepared, just
Okay.
that, when you mentioned that we are having some stormwater issues and everything, we are truly having stormwater issues, and unfortunately, we never did adopt any type of stormwater ordinances in order to help control what happens when people are developing their property. So, looking to see what we can do to take care of that. These subdivisions that are already established that are having stormwater issues, what can be done, so stay tuned. Building permits are still coming in quickly. The new office manager, Jillian Hampton, is already, she already has the 2024, all the building permits in our new permitting software. We are also utilizing the American Job Center program, and we have a team in our office now, Ellie Lakovich, that is also helping data entry into the permitting software, and they're now working on the 2023. So it's going swimmingly.
Okay.
So she's like doing it for free, getting credit for it.
Actually, the American Job Center pays her. It's a federal program and they will pay her. And she gets to work for 180 hours.
It's free to the county.
Mhm.
So, in saying that, Rosalie, here's something I wanted to remind you about. I'll think about it at some point. Sorry.
No worries.
Bobby, is there something you wanted to bring before us tonight? You've been patient.
Bobby's 6 foot under, but I'm Robbie.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. Sorry. I didn't realize your dad had passed. I apologize.
So yes, there is. This is no jab at nobody. But I feel like we're headed down a road with codes and zoning that we're fixing to be a mess.
Okay.
And I just want to speak up to it.
Okay.
So couple of things. I sat through a meeting last year where y'all were wanting to set parameters for faces of commercial buildings.
Yes, sir.
And I agree with you. I mean, you gotta have standards, this and that. Okay? So at this point in time, the state law, which is right here,
Mhm.
okay, does not allow you to put in ready-built homes or removable homes. Anything that's not on a foundation or has footers
Mhm.
cannot be applied anywhere.
Okay.
Okay. We are allowing this. Okay.
We shouldn't be allowing this.
We are.
Where?
One's on Breeze Inn, and right now you got another one on 141.
Because this kind of falls into the tiny home discussion that we've had.
Tiny homes, tiny businesses, whatever. Once you open this door, there's no closing it.
Yeah, that's why we haven't opened this door.
Well,
It's been discussed.
we are allowing it.
Well, So,
We're issuing building permits for it.
so then that's a discussion for Rosalie,
That-
and we will. as the
That's up to
inspector-
y'all. That's
Yeah.
not for me.
But from the county standpoint, it is not legal to do that. We did not do anything as far as the tiny homes.
Correct.
We kept them in the same requirements. It's either a
That the state
manufactured,
has.
yeah, it's either a manufactured mobile home and has to meet that criteria for size and whatnot, or it's a stick built and it has to meet those criteria.
And
That's the
even,
law in Charlotte County.
even when that law came out, before you were building barn dominiums.
Yeah.
And putting posts in the ground that to pour concrete. Then when the law came out, now all barn dominiums have to have
Footer,
footer.
Yeah. not
Exactly.
just a slab.
But we are allowing stuff that does not have footers, does not have foundations to be moved in and set up. And residential, commercial, everything, and that's not part of our stuff, and that's definitely against Tennessee state law.
I agree with that. If that's
Okay.
what's happening, so we need to look into that.
The second thing that I have an issue with is when you come to get a building permit,
Mhm.
the first thing you should present is a septic permit.
Yes. You can't build if it doesn't perk.
We're not doing that neither.
Why are we not doing that?
I'm not sure what you're referring to on that one.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
The salon on 141, where's that going?
The salon on 141 is an accessory structure and it is allowed to go to the.
How is it an accessory? In our bylaws, it says you can have a salon in your house. It don't say out in the yard.
Actually, it does for a minor home or major home occupation.
No,
Yes.
it specifically says you can have a salon in your house. That's what it says. It don't say out in the yard, and it also has to have footers and a foundation.
Gotcha.
Am I right or wrong?
With this, yes, it
It
does.
automatically turns into commercial property at that time. That building does, because you can't have two buildings on one zone for residential or anything else, okay? So is that property zoned for, or the sewage zoned for that building?
The septic permit,
Yes.
the septic system, according to the ordinances in the major home occupation, which
There you go.
they were approved for a major home occupation. And if you look into what the ordinances say about that, it can be in the home, but it could also be in an accessory structure.
But is that septic provided for that?
Yes,
How? Tell me,
it is rated for that.
explain to me how.
Septic permits are based on the number of bedrooms.
But now we're dealing with commercial building.
So
We're outside of the house. We are now a commercial building.
But it-
That has nothing to do with bedrooms no more. We are outside of the house. Yes, you are correct.
Mhm.
It's based on bedrooms,
Mhm.
but once you move it outside of the house and start a business,
Mhm.
it becomes commercial. Is it rated for that?
I will look into that.
You need to.
Thank you so much for bringing it to my attention.
Also, we have one that you've inspected that the sewage is being dumped into our local creek that does not have a septic system.
Which one is this, please?
We will talk about that off camera,
Thank you.
but like I say, the first thing we should have is septic permits.
Yeah.
Then we issue building permits.
Yeah.
Then we follow state law.
it should actually go one before that. So you should have to provide your septic, your soils,
Mhm.
you do that. Then do we have the infrastructure? Do you have
Correct.
water? Do you have electricity
Exactly.
going to that property
And
before
they
you
should
start building?
not be getting COs unless they should get a building permit. They should have, well, at first they should have a septic permit. They should then get a building permit.
Mhm.
Then they should have a rough in through the electrical inspector.
Yeah.
Then they should have a final, they should have a clearance on the septic system from the state.
Yeah.
Then you get a CO.
Yeah.
All
That's
of those
the last
things
thing.
fall in, no matter what the job is.
Mhm.
Even if you're dealing with something that don't have to have a septic system,
Mhm.
but the others still apply.
Yeah.
We need to be following our codes, and that's the reason I'm here is because y'all the codes department.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to bash Rosalie. I'm speaking to the people that's in charge.
Yeah.
But we are headed down a slope.
Yeah.
That we're not gonna be able to climb out of, guys.
Well, we'll look into it.
Yeah.
Rosalie will look into it. She does an excellent job.
So thank you for letting me.
Robbie, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of give them a list of addresses of those properties that you're aware of.
She knows most of them. There's one I'm not gonna speak
That's fine.
on camera.
But we need to have some, we just need to make sure that the follow-up is done.
Right, 'cause I'm sure she doesn't know the locations you're talking about. You
Oh,
look
yeah.
into
We
it.
just discussed them. She knows all except for one.
You are.
Okay. All right.
I like that.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Yes, sir.
We don't know if there's a problem until someone says something.
Exactly. And,
So-
and like I say, I'm not bashing Rosalie.
Yeah.
We gotta get this straight.
Yep.
And get it. Because like I say, when we head down this lane.
Yeah.
With tiny homes and stuff, we are.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking right now at a property tax increase.
Mhm.
To supplement this county.
Yeah.
And tiny homes ain't gonna bring in the property increase that.
Yeah.
Something
The
else.
regular will. At the same time, both through discussions in planning and discussions that got shut down in this committee, there is no provisions for tiny homes, like I stated, for the reason that you just stated.
And they still have to pay the impact fee.
Yes, they will.
Who has to?
Can you build them?
Anymore.
No, tiny homes are not allowed.
Well,
Yeah.
They don't pay impact fee. They're not allowed.
a 400 square foot tiny home isn't allowed, correct? But there is a minimum of
As
square
long as
footage.
it has a foundation.
Yeah.
And footers.
Then it's just a stick
On
built.
site.
Stick built. It
Or
cannot be brought in on a trailer.
it can be if it meets the minimum.
No,
of a mobile home.
if it comes in on a trailer, it has to meet mobile home standards.
Yes,
Of being secured and anchored the way a mobile home is.
it actually goes a little bit before that. I was
No,
talking
they don't.
with Mr. Gregory before the meeting because I was curious about that. And there's actually mobile homes have their own inspections that have
That's
to be
right.
done and they have their
Exactly.
own labels.
They have their own labels.
And so it
It's on
has
the
to be,
frame.
yeah, it
You're
has to be
exactly right.
done. It can't just be something you threw together and you brought in on a trailer.
Which is what we're getting.
And that can't be what you got.
Actually, we say that an accessory structure may be used for a major home occupation, provided such structure meets the criteria for accessory structures as defined in this resolution. So it can be an
And
accessory
it does
structure.
not have a footing and a
that's
foundation, so now you gotta go back to this.
Yeah,
It doesn't exempt that. It just says it
That's right.
can be an accessory structure.
Exactly, just like you said.
It's just how it's constructed is what's in the
Exactly.
discrepancies now.
And at that point in time,
Yeah.
you need to figure out your septic system.
Because you're now by
You're now
adding,
on commercial, you're dealing commercial, not through bedrooms.
you're adding an additional burden to an already settled 3-bedroom septic system.
So
Or a
does that make
3-bedroom
it
house.
commercial? But from what you just read, it doesn't necessarily, they didn't say it made it
This just
commercial,
addresses major home occupation.
which
And now we're starting to get into,
it doesn't make it commercial property.
No, it's
Doesn't
not commercial
necessarily.
property, but you have a commercial business.
it's a commercial use.
Right. I get that.
It's not commercial property.
So then
But you have to
it's
figure
property.
in. You have to figure in that drainage into that septic system. At that point in time, the bedroom situation comes out the window.
You're increasing the load on the septic system, even though you still only have 3 bedrooms. Yeah.
So,
Especially
I
depending
guess
on,
it depends on what the commercial property is.
Exactly.
exactly,
The commercial.
correct,
If a mechanic shop, well,
You don't have to.
right. A salon's a different story. So, that's all I was asking.
well, I appreciate you bringing
Yes,
that to us. And I apologize for and I'm sorry to hear about your dad. I wasn't aware.
Well, that happened a long time ago. We're fine.
All right, is there anything else?
One bit of good news I'll share with everybody.
Okay.
The University of Tennessee has been tasked with resurrecting the old local planning office for those parts of the state that don't have planning staff.
Okay.
Somewhere down the road,
Yeah,
they will have something that equivalent, hopefully, to the old local planning office.
well, we've already made our adjustment.
I understand. I don't know when this goes into effect or when they will put it into effect, but they've been tasked at this point.
And I had heard that that was coming. I didn't know when it would, but I gotta say, sitting through a couple of meetings already with Amanda, our new staff person, very pleased with the performance that she's doing and the information that she's giving. I mean, she's not you, but you know, we can't have you. We gotta go with the next best.
So we don't supervise her. Should we be sitting in the meetings with an employee of the county?
No,
We don't supervise it now
So-
or Rosalie.
so once
Have
again,
nothing to do with her.
this is an oversight committee. That's why it was formed, just like EMS is an oversight for the ambulance service. We don't go on calls with the ambulances on that subcommittee.
Right.
We discuss with the supervisor or the director, and we have conversations with them if there's issues that have come up. We get clarification and we help give direction. Rosalie and her department fall underneath the mayor's office, and
Right.
he is her boss.
That's exactly.
So all we do is we gather information, we present it to the mayor, and then the mayor and Rosalie handle it. the way
I
they
just
see
didn't
fit.
understand why you were overseeing her training. Fitting in on her training. So I didn't-
No. So
Planning
Amanda
Commission.
is of the planning commission. She's now our new staff person. We don't have GNRC anymore. And so the information, she's actually more thorough than a couple of our GNRC people were. And that's where I was pleased to, I think she's gonna work out well and be very useful to both planning and BZA, and hopefully for a couple of meetings that we need, will help in here. Rick's not gonna be with us forever, so, and we've kind of abused him just a little bit outside the purview of his
You're getting
contract.
closer to the door, but it's still moves away from.
So, if there's nothing else, I'd take a motion to adjourn.
Well, I want
Darn.
adjourn.
All in favor? We are adjourned.
I'm sorry.
Jeff made the motion,
Thanks.
Alan second.
So the
All in
meeting's over.